In this section, we are going to be covering chamfers and fillets. So, what are chamfers and fillets? Imagine you have the hammer representation on the right? Over here, the handle, you can see it has a lot of sharp edges or straight edges that could get quite uncomfortable to hold when using the tool. One way to actually smooth out these edges after you define some, let's say, preliminary geometry is by adding a chamfer or a fillet, which is pretty much rounding off of the edges over here. So how do we go about this? Let's go back into our SpaceClaim environment. Let's get rid of this geometry that we've drawn. Let's go back into Sketch. Let's select a nice little plane. Okay, so let's start off by creating the hammer representation. Yeah. What we can do is create a rectangle for the head of the hammer. You can extrude that up to your desired length. If you're happy with the head of the hammer, you can start working on the handle by selecting a plane as we have previously covered and discussed on the face of the head of the hammer, and simply moving the sketch plane around, we can define over here a position for our handle. Once we are happy with the position of our handle, we can extrude this section now. So extrude it. Let's say once you are happy with your selection, you can let's say we're happy with that handle. Now let's move on to creating the chamfers and fillets. So where do these lie? They're not necessarily over here in the tool ribbon. We have to go back into the pull tool, and over here again in the options section, if you look down, you can see you have a round and a chamfer option. However, it doesn't let you select them because they are grayed out. This is because you need to select first what geometry you'd like to edit, as is normal with the pull tool. So if we selected, let's say, this area, this surface area, it allows us to edit the length of the handle. However, up to now, we have only covered selecting areas to edit. What happens if we select a line to edit? Now you can see that we don't have the preliminary or the original extrude options that were highlighted. We have the bottom row of options that are highlighted. The first option that we have is round. That's the one highlighted by default because it's the most used or most common one when editing edges. Just trying to find a nice little view to show you. So if we zoom in a bit, what happens, you can see this arrow over here. It's sort of perpendicular to the line facing it. What happens if we drag on it? You can see that it starts to create a nice little rounded edge on the edge that we've selected. This is what the round button does, or round option does. This is called a fillet. Yeah, a chamfer is similar to a fillet, however, it's more of a straight edge, and you can swap between the two options very easily by clicking these buttons or by using the hotkeys. You can also define the radius of the fillet that you want. Over here we have 0.72 millimeters, just done through clicking and dragging. If we set this to 2 millimeters, it automatically updates it. What we can also do, if I do a bit of Control Z, you can select multiple edges to edit at the same time instead of editing solely one singular edge. And now if we drag, you can see how all 4 edges are edited at the same time. There's one very important thing or very important feature to note. You can see over here, the maximum that it lets me do is 2 millimeters. What if we actually define a value larger than 3 millimeters? Actually increases or edits the whole area. It actually adds material. As you can see, it increases our initial circle or initial rectangular surface area that we had. This is because ANSYS SpaceClaim has a couple of smart features where it can interpret what you'd like to do. Sometimes that's beneficial, sometimes that's helpful, sometimes the interpretation or extrapolation of the data is not as accurate or is not exactly what we'd want or we would wish. But in this case, you can do those round, those chamfers, or that fillet. And then you have a smooth edge over there. Now it's time to move on to the second exercise. In this exercise, I would like you to use a lot of the sketch tools that we have covered in the first week, such as the Trim Entities tool, and I'd like you to use the chamfer, the fillet, the multiple area extrusion that we have covered in this lesson, and the cut option of the pool tool to create a sort of wheel analogy as is portrayed by the bottom image going from the top image geometry. If I give you a bit of a hint or a starting block, if we just get rid of this and go back into sketch mode, and I don't know why my plane is over there. However, let's just quickly reorientate ourselves. There we go. Just doing some random geometry over here just for the purpose of this example. So, why do I mention using the Trim Entities tool? That's because, let's say, you want to create a complicated feature or a complicated sketch. It's more easier to start with a couple of geometrical constants. So, obviously, I've created this geometry just using a few simple circles and squares, but just by trimming away a few pieces over here, you can create many different curves. Trimming away a few of these. So then we have a more specific surface area of our square. Obviously, drawing all of this using a freehand or using several arcs is not as simple as actually sketching out all the different geometrical pieces, such as the squares and circles, and then trimming all the unnecessary bits. So if we just get rid of the curves, trying to think of another good example over here to demonstrate. So as an example, let's see. Let's say we have a square and just want to trim the edges of the square with circular arcs. Again, using the Trim Entities tool, we can easily get rid of all of our unnecessary geometry. You can see, you can create some very interesting geometrical pieces or geometrical features by combining all the geometrical tools that we have learned up to now and that we have at our disposal. So going back to this, obviously getting a couple of these spokes in the wheel and a couple of the hole sections in the wheel, you can start off by drawing straight lines and just a few circles. And as I mentioned, trimming away all the unnecessary geometry. Then using the pull tool to extrude the different areas or doing a pull on multiple area sketches. And finally, creating a fillet or a round on the edge to give that wheel a nice round surface. So, what have we covered in this lesson so far? Pretty much, the pull tool has many different features and options. You can use the pull tool on any enclosed area of the sketch. You can also pull many different surface areas of the sketch by holding Ctrl and Shift to do a multiple area selection. You can define your sketch plane on the surface of a 3D model or actually create a new plane to define as a sketch plane in different areas or different sections of the model. You can use the pull tool both to add to 3D geometry or subtract from 3D geometry. You can use the chamfer tool and the fillet tool to smooth or remove hard edges of your 3D models. Thank you and see you next week.